And then I don't know, do you want to share your screen and show the dashboards, or should I? What do you think we should do, Tim?
Let me share my screen.
All
and
right.
then let's take a little look and tour around the metrics that we have by now in Sisense, formerly known as Periscope, which is the first hard thing that a lot of people don't recognize yet, that they have changed their company name. So what
took me a while to remember Sisense, but yeah, Sisense.
I'm sticking with Periscope. So what are the new tools that we have or that were implemented over the last weeks? I think there are two important facts around it. On one hand, which is the basis of everything, and is the basis also especially now for all the member counting, is that that we have integrated now in Periscope SQL snippets that make it super easy to have always and everywhere the same types of queries. So this is basically the basis for it. And to some extent, if you want to reduce stuff, then I think this is also one of the first things that you should take a look at, as they are also working on top of each other. So this means that if you would change now how we count our MR rate or how we count the total MRs, this basically updates everything now. All the dashboards,
it makes it really consistent.
Yeah.
And this is things like who's on what team and like how you attribute various things to various parts of the organization.
Exactly. So right now there is one thing that is still built by a very pragmatic script at the moment, so which is called the team member definition. So this is soon hopefully then transferred to a fully automated import through a serverless function. So that will be the next step in the whole process. So this is just the starting point to iterate fast on it. And this basically defines for each team member of the development department in which team they are, which technology they are working on, if they are backend, if they're front end, in which section they are. And this is all based on Team YAML, is then basically figuring out through the username of Team YAML the GitLab user ID, so that we basically can track then in our data warehouse which MRs the people have done, and also takes then a connection to Bamboo to basically track when those people have started and when they have basically joined GitLab, so that we know who was when in which team. There's only one caveat that we currently need to work over, is that people have different actual names in Bamboo, so they are really birth names and how they are spelled and written with all the different first, second, and how many first names there are, compared to what they have in Team YAML. So there is one file which is in the Google Sheet, which is also linked in the handbook.
I was having to deal with this the other day, where there was a bunch of folks in my group that had, it was very interesting actually to see how people, because it makes you break them into first name, last name, and you know, for if you have four names, for example, that's less common, or you know, there were other people that would go by a nickname, preferred name. So
yeah, so we have made the super pragmatic choice of simply having a Google Sheet for now to have this mapping and basically connect those two data sources through that. Hopefully we are also working and looking into adding simply a field in Bamboo, perhaps even the username in GitLab, so that we have like a one-to-one connection and don't need to work through funky names, because of course this is always a little bit shaky. But by now it works better than expected. And what this is basically is the definition for all the queries that come afterwards. And then you have, for example, you have a SQL snippet that you can reuse, which is called give me all the development team members by team, and then you just add like the team name, and this would give you all team members. And the same goes, and those are the big queries, are all the development team metrics by members, which is basically defining all how they are counted, how they are summarized, and how basically counted the different engineers are per team. And so
does all of this SQL, does it all live in Sisense, or is it like are there files or a repo someplace, or you have to edit it through here?
Yeah, it's all in Sisense, and it's very special SQL. You need to find out there are a lot of bumpy roads in Sisense around how the SQL snippets are defined and how that stuff is working. So that was the majority of the work. But in reality, what you can do now is you can simply query with development team metrics by members. give the team name, and then you have basically the different data sets in your graph. So you can also reuse it at different points. The second part of the whole story, what came out of this was then that I said, I was looking at the different dashboards that the different teams had over time, because there were already team dashboards, and just in my section, there were at that point, I think 5 or 6 different ones. And the problem was that as Sisense has no sort of inheritance or a reusage model, nothing. The problem was that someone started at some point like a team dashboard, then someone copied it, they changed a little bit the query, they changed it a little bit, so it's like copy and paste hell in reality. As you have charts that look completely the same, but in reality had completely slightly different counting mechanisms.
It's hard, you're counting different things, and it's inconsistent. It's very hard to understand what's going on. Yeah, makes sense.
As we figured then out along the way that perhaps we can improve it here or there, or we need to include or exclude that project, and stuff like that. And that's
because complicated too, because things like people may move between teams, that and so it's a complex thing to implement. It's not as simple as it maybe seems.
And that led me then in reality to let's build one dashboard that has as much metrics on it as we can, and basically have the capability to use a filter based on the team. So that's what we built in the Universal Engineering Team Metrics dashboard. And the topic here is that you always need to set a specific filter. So the first time you load this, there will be nothing set, and it will simply show focus data. So for this, you simply go in here, you look through it, and you select your team, for example, that you want to see, say Gitterly team, apply, and then basically everything reloads around those metrics.
Are those filters like, do those get shared by everyone, or are those kind of specific to you logging in and looking at it?
The problem is that they are specific to your login. So if I would simply, and there is currently no way to share which value I have set on the team ID. So if I send you a link, you will see something completely different. That is very confusing with Sisense. I even deposited that stuff with the data team already, which will be talking soon with Sisense to have this as a feature request so that you can put in the URL, hey, please show me this dashboard with this value in the filter.
But if I'm using this, it won't mess somebody up. Like you and I could look at it at the same time for different teams without interfering. Okay, exactly. That's good.
But on the other hand, I have seen also that people share it, and then they see some other teams because they haven't selected anything, etc., etc. And what we have here is that we have the team number amount, we have the team members, so that we can check basically if everyone is actually counted for that is in the team, because of course Team YAML is not super consistent, or was not super consistent. By now we have.
You'll see red in there, right? Big red blocks. Yeah. If it's not right, it'll tell you.
Exactly, the red ones, the names, but also sometimes people were missing because they didn't have the right attributes in the team setup and things like that. And this is basically to check that. Then you have also the MRs per engineer on a month-to-month basis. So we see that this team has basically improved the MRs per engineer from the last month to this month by 25%, for example. They have the total MRs also went up by 25%. They have quite a growth also over time with ICs. So that has also grown. And down here, that's our main MR rate. So you see the MRs per engineer per month. So you basically see not only the actual numbers, the actual averages, but you see also the average of the average. So you see basically the trend a little bit better. And we have currently the target of 10. We are now targeting more and more at 11. But there you can also see how much you are above the target and how much the team is growing and things like that. The same goes then also on a weekly basis, so that we know how much basically the output during the week is. We have the total MRs, which are also, I believe, quite interesting to especially project the current month and where we are hiding there. A very interesting thing for depending on the team are the MRs per category, is really on what types of stuff is the team actually working. So I believe there you can also see, for example, we have one team in dev that has simply had a month where a lot of like performance or availability stuff came in during the month, and then you really see, okay, there was a lot of stuff happening, and our amount of features went down. The same goes, for example, for undefined. So the better the issues are labeled, the better we actually see then what's going on. So there's also the undefined MRs.
So those are missing a label that would categorize it in the
Exactly.
in that graph. Yeah. And if you go in and change those, will the graphs will update, I guess, at some point if you add those labels?
Yeah, they should update as soon as the data warehouse is updated, I believe. That should work, hopefully.
Yeah. And the mean time to merge, that's one that's interesting to me, because I think that kind of points to how maybe some measure of how much friction is there in the process. Like how long does it take to, do the back and forth, review things, get them, integrated. And if that's very low, then, it maybe feels like you're moving really fast, and if it's slow, it feels less good.
Exactly. Note that the mean time to merge is also very interesting, and you can see quite easy trends in the different teams. What is also quite interesting is also depending on the team is the MRs per project. So you can see in which types of projects the team is actually working in. So for example, front-end teams, this is pretty interesting because you can also see if they are working more on components or if they are working more on features or in the GitLab section, or how basically the percentages are in the different directions. So it's also, I think, quite nice statistics to get to the bottom of how you can improve or what's going on in a team. The other thing is that here in the merged MRs, you also have an overview of what actually went into those statistics and what was merged. And we highlight everything, I believe, everything above 14 days or so is then also highlighted. And you can then go in and basically check that MR and figure out what was going on. Was this stalled to some extent? Had this really problems? So I've also seen teams that simply had in a release cycle, they had a lot of orange ones because they simply, the stuff from the last time slipped and took too long. So we are rather focusing on doing more iteration, for example. That is one of the
that's great, because I know in my group there are some teams that's an issue. The time to merge can take a long time for various reasons, but it's something we want to look into.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is basically the Universal Engineering Team Metrics dashboard, and we have the same thing also on a section level. And this is currently all only around member-based counting. So we have just decided and are going forward with this mix between member-based and label-based. And Can is currently updating the overall development one. But you have basically here the same statistics that you would also have on the team basis, also for this whole section, which is also quite interesting to see how the trend is going for your whole section at the moment and how it is progressing. There we have also some more statistics around what are the levels you have, what is the technology stack people are working with, and what the team sizes are, for example. So also quite good to see if there's something that is getting too big or just has one or two engineers working on it. Yeah.
This is great. Thank you so much for showing it to me, Tim.
Thanks a lot.